There's a story about a master swordsman in ancient Japan who was once challenged by a younger, more aggressive warrior. The young man was faster, stronger, and more technically proficient. He had studied every advanced technique and could execute them flawlessly. Yet when they faced each other, the master defeated him in seconds. When asked how this was possible, the master said something that changed how people understood excellence forever. He said that the young warrior had learned 1,000 techniques once, but he had learned one technique 1,000 times. This is the fundamental difference between those who dabble in skills and those who achieve true mastery, and it's a principle that the samurai understood better than perhaps any other culture in history. Today we're going to explore the ancient samurai approach to mastery, a system that transformed ordinary people into legendary masters, not just in combat, but in every area of life they touched. These aren't secrets reserved for warriors. They're principles that will work for you whether you're learning to code, mastering a musical instrument, building a business, or developing any skill you care about. The samurai didn't become masters because they had more talent than everyone else. They became masters because they approached practice differently, they thought about improvement differently, they handled failure differently, and most importantly, they never stopped refining the fundamentals even when they became experts. Let me tell you about Miyamoto Musashi, perhaps the greatest swordsman who ever lived. Musashi fought over 60 duels in his lifetime and never lost a single one, not one. And here's what's fascinating: when people studied his techniques, they didn't find anything particularly exotic or complicated. What they found was someone who had perfected the basics to such a degree that he could adapt them to any situation instantly. Musashi understood something that most people miss entirely. Excellence is not about complexity, it's about simplicity executed with absolute precision. Think about this for a moment. In our modern world, we're obsessed with advanced techniques, secret strategies, and hidden shortcuts. We see someone who's excellent at something and we assume they must know some advanced method that we don't. But that's almost never the case. What separates masters from everyone else is not what they know, it's how deeply they know it. This brings us to the first core principle of samurai mastery, what the samurai called Kihon. Kihon translates roughly to basic techniques or fundamental movements. And here's where it gets interesting. Even master swordsmen who had trained for 30 or 40 years would still begin every single practice session with the most basic strikes and stances, every single time. They would practice drawing the sword from its sheath. They would practice the fundamental ready position. They would practice basic cuts that they had done tens of thousands of times before. Now, to an outsider, this might seem wasteful or even boring. Why would a master waste time on things they've already perfected? But the samurai understood something profound. The basics aren't just the foundation that you build upon and then leave behind. The basics are the entire structure. Everything else is just the basics being applied in different contexts. Let me give you a modern example. If you've ever watched a truly great public speaker, you might notice something interesting. They don't use complicated rhetorical devices or fancy vocabulary. They use simple words, clear sentences, and basic storytelling structures. But they use them with such precision and timing that the effect is powerful. The same is true in every field. The best programmers write simple, clean code. The best writers use straightforward language. The best athletes perform basic movements with perfect form. Excellence looks simple because it is simple. It's just simple things done with extraordinary depth and precision. So here's the question you need to ask yourself right now. Whatever skill you're trying to develop, can you perform the most basic elements of that skill perfectly every single time without even thinking about it? Most people would say no, and that's the problem. We rush past the fundamentals because they feel too easy, too boring, too basic. We want to get to the exciting advanced stuff, but there is no advanced stuff. There are only fundamentals applied in increasingly complex situations. Think about this. A master swordsman doesn't have different techniques for different opponents. He has the same basic techniques, but he's refined them so deeply that they work perfectly regardless of the situation. This is what true mastery looks like. It's not knowing more things, it's knowing fewer things more deeply. Take whatever skill you're developing and strip it down to its absolute fundamentals. Identify the 5 or 10 basic elements that everything else builds from. Then practice those elements until you could perform them perfectly, even if someone woke you up in the middle of the night. This might take months, it might take years. But this is where real excellence begins. When your fundamentals are so solid that they become instinctive, that's when you can truly perform at a high level. Because now you're not thinking about how to do things, you're just doing them. Your conscious mind is free to focus on strategy, creativity, and adaptation rather than basic execution. Now let's move to the second principle, one that might be even more important. The samurai called it Zanshin, which translates to remaining mind or continuing awareness. When a samurai finished a sword strike, he didn't relax. He didn't celebrate. He maintained complete awareness of his surroundings and kept his body in a ready state. Why? Because in a real fight, the action isn't finished just because you've completed your technique. The situation is not truly resolved until you've followed through completely and returned to a state of readiness. Zanshin isn't really about combat, it's about completion, it's about follow-through, it's about maintaining quality and attention all the way to the actual end of a task, not just the point, where you get bored and want to move on. Most people today have the exact opposite of Zanshin. We start projects with tremendous enthusiasm, but that enthusiasm fades. We complete maybe 80 or 90% of a task and then rush to move on to something new. We finish the main part of an essay but don't bother reading it one more time. We build a product that mostly works but don't polish the final details. We practice a skill until we can do it reasonably well and then declare ourselves done. This lack of follow-through is everywhere, and it's one of the main things that separates good work from truly excellent work. Think about the last time you received something from a true craftsman. What made it excellent? I'll bet it was the attention to detail, the polish, the sense that every single element had been considered and refined. That's Zanshin in action. It's the understanding that quality lives in the final 5% of effort. Anyone can get something to 90% completion. Getting it to 99% is where mastery lives. The samurai understood that this is exactly backwards from how most people think. The main work is just preparation. The real work happens in the follow-through, in the refinement, in maintaining full attention all the way to true completion. So you change your definition of what it means for something to be finished. A task is not done when you've completed the core requirements. It's done when you've reviewed it carefully, polished every detail, fixed any small errors, and made sure it genuinely meets your highest standard. This complete follow-through might only add 5 or 10% more time to your work, but it often doubles or triples the quality of your output. This is the power of Zanshin. Imagine you're learning to play the piano and you're working on a difficult piece. Most people practice until they can play through the piece without major mistakes, and then they move on. But someone practicing with Zanshin would play through the piece successfully several times, not just once. They would note which sections still felt slightly uncomfortable. They would identify the transitions between sections that weren't perfectly smooth. They would work on these details until the piece felt effortless, not just possible. This is the difference between someone who can play 20 pieces adequately and someone who can play 5 pieces beautifully. The latter is much more valuable. Quality of execution matters far more than quantity of knowledge. And Zanshin is what creates quality of execution. Now we come to the third principle, perhaps the most challenging one. The samurai called this Fudoshin, which means immovable mind or unshakable spirit. Before you think this is just about being tough or stubborn, let me explain what it really means. Fudoshin is about developing a mind that stays calm and focused, no matter what challenges or distractions appear. A warrior with Fudoshin could face a superior opponent without fear. He could receive harsh criticism without becoming defensive. He could experience painful failure without losing confidence in his path. His commitment to his own development remains steady, regardless of external circumstances. This might be the most important quality for mastery in the modern world, because we face an unprecedented number of things that can shake our commitment and make us abandon our path before we reach competence, let alone mastery. Think about what happens when you start learning a new skill. At first, you're excited. Progress comes quickly. Everything is new and interesting. But then, progress slows down. The skill gets harder. You start to see other people who are better than you. You receive feedback that points out your weaknesses. You fail at things you thought you could do. Doubt creeps in. This is where most people quit. Not because they lack ability, but because they lack Fudoshin. Their mind is moved by discouragement, by comparison, by criticism. And when your mind is moved, your commitment wavers. When your commitment wavers, your practice becomes inconsistent. When your practice becomes inconsistent, you never reach mastery. The samurai understood that the path to excellence is long and filled with obstacles. There will be moments of doubt. There will be painful failures. There will be people who don't understand what you're trying to do. None of this matters. What matters is whether you can continue walking your path with steady commitment regardless of these external factors. Building Fudoshin requires you to make a crucial mental separation. You have to separate your emotions from your actions. This doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. It means not letting your emotions control whether you do the work. When you feel discouraged, you practice anyway. When you receive negative feedback, you look for the useful information without taking it as a personal attack. When someone else achieves what you're working toward, you study their method with genuine interest. When you fail, you analyze what went wrong and adjust without questioning whether you should be on this path at all. This mental strength doesn't develop overnight. Fudoshin grows through practice, specifically through repeatedly choosing to continue when everything inside you wants to quit. Each time you push through doubt and keep practicing, your Fudoshin becomes a little stronger. Each time you fail and choose to learn from it, your foundation becomes a little more solid. Each time you see someone else succeed and choose curiosity over jealousy, your mind becomes a little more immovable. Think of it like this. Your commitment to mastery is a flame. When you first start, it's a small, fragile flame that can be blown out by any strong wind of doubt or difficulty. But every time you protect that flame and keep it burning despite the wind, it grows a little larger. Over time, that small flame becomes a bonfire that no wind can extinguish. That's Fudoshin. Let me tell you about Musashi again. Late in his life, after he had become the most famous swordsman in Japan, he retired to a cave to write. He could have rested on his reputation. Instead, he spent his final years refining his philosophy and passing on his knowledge. Why? Because his commitment to the path was unshakable. The path itself was the destination. This is what Fudoshin teaches us. The goal of mastery is not to reach some finish line where you can finally relax. The goal is to develop yourself into someone who walks the path of continuous improvement with joy and commitment regardless of circumstances. When you have this quality, external obstacles become irrelevant. Other people's progress becomes irrelevant. Your own failures become simply information for improvement rather than reasons to quit. So how do you build Fudoshin practically? Start by identifying the things that typically shake your commitment. Is it comparison to others? Is it criticism? Is it slow progress? Once you know what moves your mind, you can prepare for it. When comparison arises, remind yourself that everyone's path is different. When criticism comes, train yourself to receive it neutrally and extract useful insights. When progress feels slow, remember that deep mastery takes time. When you fail, treat it as valuable data rather than a verdict on your worth. This is hard work. It might be harder than learning the actual skill you're trying to master, but it's also more important, because Fudoshin is what allows you to stay on the path long enough to actually develop mastery. Talent matters far less than consistency, and consistency is impossible without an immovable mind. Now let's bring all three principles together. Kihon tells us to focus on perfecting fundamentals. Zanshin tells us to maintain quality and attention all the way through to true completion. Fudoshin tells us to develop a mind that cannot be shaken by obstacles or slow progress. When you combine these three principles, you create a practice system that naturally leads to mastery given enough time. You're working on the right things. You're working on them with complete attention and follow through. And you're doing this consistently over long periods regardless of how you feel or what obstacles appear. This is not a fast path. The samurai understood that real mastery takes years, often decades. Musashi trained from age 13 until his death at 62. But here's what most people miss. The samurai weren't waiting to reach some finish line. They understood that the training itself was the point. The continuous refinement was the reward, not something to be endured. This is perhaps the deepest lesson. We think of mastery as a destination, but it's actually a way of being. It's a commitment to continuous improvement, attention to detail, and unshakable dedication to your craft. When you embody these qualities, you are already a master in the most important sense, regardless of your current skill level. Think about your own life right now. What skill are you trying to develop? Are you focusing on fundamentals or jumping around trying to learn advanced techniques? Are you completing things with full attention or rushing through the final stages? Are you maintaining steady practice or does your commitment waver based on how you feel? These questions reveal where you stand on the path to mastery. Here's the beautiful thing. It doesn't matter how far along you are right now. What matters is whether you're willing to walk this path with commitment. The samurai principles work for everyone at every level. If you're just starting out, this might be the perfect time to build these principles into your practice from the beginning. Start by identifying the core fundamentals of your skill and committing to practice them deeply. Make a decision that you will complete every practice session with full attention. Develop the habit of practicing consistently, regardless of your emotional state or immediate results. Do this for a month, then do it for 3 months, then do it for a year. Watch what happens. While other people are jumping from technique to technique, you're going deeper. While they're producing rushed, incomplete work, you're producing polished results. While they're quitting when things get hard, you're continuing steadily. And the gap between your level and theirs will start to widen, not because you're more talented, but because you're walking the path they abandoned. This is the power of the samurai approach. It's not flashy, it's not quick, it doesn't promise overnight transformation. What it promises is something much more valuable. It promises that if you commit to these principles and apply them consistently, you will eventually achieve a level of mastery that most people never reach. Not because it's beyond their capability, but because they're not willing to do what's required. The samurai understood something that our modern culture has forgotten. Real excellence requires patience, dedication, and a long-term commitment to continuous improvement. There are no shortcuts. There are no hacks. There is only the path and the question of whether you will walk it with the discipline it demands. So here's my challenge to you. Choose one skill you want to master, then make a commitment to apply these 3 principles for the next 90 days. Focus on perfecting the fundamentals. Complete every practice session with full attention and follow through. Maintain consistent practice regardless of your emotions or immediate progress. 90 days is not enough time to achieve mastery, but it is enough time to transform how you approach practice. And once you transform your approach, mastery becomes inevitable, given enough time. The samurai path to excellence worked for ancient warriors, and it will work for you today. The principles are timeless because they're based on fundamental truths about how skill actually develops. Kihon, Zanshin, Fudoshin. Perfect the fundamentals, follow through completely, and develop an immovable mind. These 3 principles will carry you further than any advanced technique or secret strategy ever could. Because they don't just teach you how to do one thing well, they teach you how to approach everything in your life with the mindset of a master. The question is not whether this path works. It always has, and it always will. The only question is whether you will commit to walking it. Will you practice the basics when everyone else is chasing advanced techniques? Will you polish your work when everyone else is rushing to finish? Will you continue practicing when everyone else is quitting? If you can answer yes to these questions, if you can embody these samurai principles in your daily practice, then mastery is not just possible for you, it's inevitable. It's only a matter of time. So start today. Choose your path, identify your fundamentals, practice with complete attention, and refuse to let anything move your mind from your commitment. This is the samurai way. This is the path to doing anything exceptionally well. And write in the comments that I will master any skill in my life. Thank you for watching.